of such importance. Like a lot of times you don't get to skip that step, but in cases of medical, you get to skip a step and say like, hey, hang tight. We're not all the way there yet, but look, this is kind of alarming.
Mm-hmm.
They had a case and it all corroded, but these guys had a case where they were able to infect a rhesus monkey with CWD.
Oh.
But then it wasn't replicable, didn't hold up. But when things like that happen, they tend to get a ton of media. But then down the road, the media doesn't follow suit. Like there's been cases where there was one not long ago where they were looking at people that had this rare form of dementia, and they found that of these people that had this rare form of dementia, a couple of them were deer hunters who lived in CWD areas, right? So they come out with hey, everybody, check this out. But then it winds up being that when you do a statistical analysis on it, it was no different than anything else. There was no reason that it wasn't like they scored higher, that deer hunters scored higher, or nothing.
It's just a certain percentage of people get dementia.
Yeah, and so it's like a certain number of people eat dementia, a certain number of people eat venison, and statistically you're going to have some overlap if you survey enough people. So even though they gave like a big heads up, it won't be nothing there. But yeah, CWD, it's a highly infectious disease. It was first identified in Colorado on a research facility, not a game farm. It was first identified on a cervid research facility in Colorado, I believe in the early 70s. And then there's been a debate. Like some people feel that it was always there and wasn't detected, right? And that it wasn't like we found it the minute it came out. It was just that it would perhaps had been there, and then we discovered that it was always there. But it does expand its range all the time, right? Even in the last few years, we've had our first cases in Montana, and we keep every year we add, like without fail, every year we find CWD in states where it didn't previously exist, or within states that have CWD, we find CWD in counties that didn't have it. Oftentimes you can look and it makes sense because it flows, but now and then you get these weird jumps, right? Where something jumps a big moat of inactivity, and then all of a sudden you get like a new hot spot, and you look and be like, well, if it's an infectious disease and deer aren't flying in airplanes, how did it jump? Some of the jumps people tie it to transporting. There's a theory that is well accepted in a lot of circles would be that moving cervids, moving deer and elk to penned operations has facilitated the movement of CWD. What it used to mean to be if someone was a CWD denier before, it would be that they denied that it was a thing. Like there is no disease called CWD. It's generally accepted now that there's a disease called CWD, but now the debate is sort of does it matter or not, right? Our mutual friend Doug Dern is like heavily involved in CWD, combating CWD, trying to get more money spent to understand CWD. And you're looking at, there's two risks with CWD. One risk is that ultimately it's going to lead to like destruction of deer herds. Meaning if you get it's always fatal. And if infection rates get to a certain point, we're going to lose deer, right? Like if it's always fatal and you have infection rates of 50 or 60% and it takes a couple years to kill them, like you're going to run out of big bucks because nothing can live long enough. The other fear is that it jumps the barrier and becomes a human pathogen, So people, all the hunters I know, like the question we always talk about is like, would you eat CWD positive meat?
Right. Even if it doesn't jump currently,
yep.
Would you take that risk?
So Yanni was recently with a guy, and he's like, him and his family have eaten 4 CWD positive deer. Man, I couldn't serve it to my kids.
No, I wouldn't eat it myself either.
I can't serve it to my kids.
No,
I haven't knowingly eat it, but here's the thing. Here's the rub. I've said this number before, and people are like, that's not true, but it's true. I'm telling you, hundreds of thousands of people have eaten CWD positive. Hundreds of thousands of people have eaten CWD positive meat.
I would imagine that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over many decades.
Yeah.
Right. So at what point do you get comfortable?
I don't know.
it's a dude. It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough one because
it's a tough one.
It can jump. It hasn't.
It hasn't.
But when you look at the history of these types of diseases, especially prion diseases like mad cow, prion disease jumped people.
You know the debate between prion and prion?
No.
You know, you hear
I used to say prion, but then I heard scientists say prion, and I wanted to sound smart.
Well,
so I changed it.
the biologist Jim Heffelfinger, you should that'd be a very good guy for you to have on your show someday. The biologist Jim Heffelfinger sent me a thing where the guy that named it, the guy that coined the term, spelled out phonetically how it's supposed to be pronounced. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to stick with prion now. If the guy that came up with it says prion.
Oh, so that's what it is?
And not prion.
Okay.
Yeah. He's like, we'll call it this and we'll pronounce it this way.
Okay. So it's prion.
It's now I'm trying to, I always try to remember which one it is, and it's it's prion. It's scary, dude. It's scary. And Doug, I said this 100 times like before, like if I say, man, the main thing I'm worried about is people getting it, that pisses Doug off. Because Doug's worried about that we're gonna lose big bucks and people. He wants to shut. He likes healthy deer.
Right. And
he doesn't want a disease running through his deer herd.
It hasn't jumped to cows or anything else.
No, and that's that's one area where I'm gonna get myself in trouble with Doug in all kinds of ways. Because that's the thing I think about is it's not that I'm not saying the ag world is complacent. Right. I'm not saying they're complacent. Like, there's a lot of interest in the agricultural community to understand CWD better. But if you look and be like, dude, a cow looks a hell of a lot more like a deer than I do.
Right.
I'm just going to watch the cow. And all of a sudden these cows start getting sick. Then my ass is going to get nervous.
Right.
But I'm like, they're rubbing noses with these deer.
Yeah. And it gets on the grass. It gets in